In one moment he lost everything. His job, his dignity, his reputation. All because of a kiss no one could explain. The video spread like wildfire across the internet. A poor driver, soaking wet from the rain, pressing his lips against the bride's mouth right there at the altar. Her billionaire groom watched in absolute horror. Security grabbed him. The crowd screamed. By the time the truth came out, 3 weeks had passed. 3 weeks of his life shattered. But when the world finally understood what really happened that day, everyone realized something profound. It wasn't a kiss of desire or desperation. It was a kiss of life itself. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And if you're new here, click on the subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Now you might be wondering, why did this man risk everything for someone he barely knew? Was it love at first sight? Was it an act of desperation? Or was there something far deeper hidden beneath the surface that day? That wedding wasn't just about two people getting married. It became a battlefield between truth and lies, between what people saw and what really happened. The cameras captured one moment in time, but no one understood the full story until weeks later. The question everyone was asking wasn't whether he loved her. It was this: how did a poor driver know exactly what to do when every other person at that wedding froze in fear? What secret connection existed between them that nobody knew about? Let me take you back to where this story really begins. In a bustling city where the poor worked in the shadows and the rich lived in towers of glass and steel, there was a man named Marcus. He was a driver for a luxury car service, earning just enough to survive and send half of his paycheck back to his mother who suffered from a chronic illness in their small hometown. Marcus wasn't bitter about his life, though he had every reason to be. He kept his head down, did his job with dignity, and treated every passenger with respect, even though most looked through him like he was invisible. Then one morning, everything changed when a new client was added to his regular route. A woman named Sarah. She stepped into his car wearing designer clothes and expensive jewelry, but something about her felt different from the other wealthy passengers. She was kind. She actually looked Marcus in the eye when she spoke to him. She asked about his life, his family, his dreams. Most importantly, she smiled. Genuinely smiled. At a person society had taught her to ignore. Day after day, Marcus drove Sarah to her office, to charity events, to restaurants where she met with her billionaire fiancé Michael. He noticed things about her that nobody else seemed to see. The way her breathing sometimes became shallow during their drives. The way she'd reach into her purse and pull out a small medication bottle when she thought he wasn't looking. The way her hand trembled slightly when she opened the car door. Marcus never asked questions. He simply paid attention. One afternoon, Sarah mentioned casually that she had a heart condition her whole life. Nothing serious, she said with a forced smile. Just something she managed with medication and careful living. But Michael, her fiancé, didn't know the severity. She'd hidden it from him because she was afraid he wouldn't marry someone with a weakness, someone who might become a burden. Marcus heard the fear in her voice and understood immediately what it meant to carry secrets that could destroy your life. The wedding day arrived like a dream wrapped in expensive silk. Sarah looked absolutely stunning in her white gown, and the venue gleamed with thousands of lights and flowers. Everything had been planned for months. The who's who of the city was there. News cameras lined the entrance. Michael stood at the altar looking proud, surrounded by his family's legacy and power. Marcus was stationed outside with the limousine, wearing his best uniform, his heart doing strange things as he watched Sarah walk up the aisle through his view of the doors. He was happy for her, truly, even though that happiness tasted like something he couldn't quite name. The ceremony began beautifully. The vows were exchanged. Everything was perfect. Then, as she walked back down the aisle as Michael's new wife, something changed. Sarah's breathing became irregular. Her face drained of color. She clutched at her chest. Michael didn't notice at first because the music was loud and everyone was celebrating. But Marcus saw everything from where he stood. He knew that look. He'd seen it on his mother's face many times. Sarah was in cardiac distress. She collapsed before anyone could catch her, falling to the ground in her pristine white dress. The crowd erupted into chaos. Michael knelt beside her, shouting her name. Security scrambled. Guests reached for their phones. But in that moment of absolute panic, nobody knew what to do. Nobody knew that Sarah had a heart condition. Nobody except Marcus. He made a choice that would change his life forever. He pushed past security. He pushed through the screaming crowd. He knelt beside Sarah, and from years of watching his mother suffer, from instincts he didn't even know he possessed, he began performing rescue breathing. His lips met hers. The crowd went silent. Cameras flashed. Someone screamed. Security pulled him away, but not before those crucial moments of life-giving breath had passed from his mouth to hers. Her eyes fluttered. Color returned to her face. An ambulance pulled up seconds later. Sarah was rushed to the hospital, and Marcus was arrested on the spot. By evening, the video was everywhere. Not as a hero story, but as a scandal. Opportunistic driver kisses bride at wedding, the headlines read. Poor man throws himself on billionaire bride during ceremony. Social media erupted with speculation and judgment. People who weren't there created narratives that fit their biases. He was a pervert trying to take advantage. He was a desperate man seeking attention. He was a gold digger with no respect for boundaries. The facts didn't matter anymore. The story had taken on a life of its own. Marcus was fired from his job that same evening. The luxury car service couldn't afford the scandal. His manager, who'd always been fair to him, called with regret in his voice. I'm sorry, but we have no choice. Police questioned him for 8 hours. Without any evidence of wrongdoing, without any charge that could stick, they eventually released him, but not before his face had been photographed and broadcast on every news station in the city. Angry online threats poured in. Someone threw a rock through his apartment window. He received death threats from people who believed he was a predator. His neighbors, who once greeted him kindly, now looked at him with suspicion and fear. The worst part was the silence from Sarah. She was recovering in the hospital, and she hadn't said a word in his defense. Marcus understood that she probably couldn't speak openly, that Michael probably wouldn't let her, that the family's lawyers were handling everything. But the not knowing was torture. Had she forgotten about him already? Did she believe the narrative too? His mother called from home crying. She'd seen the news coverage. Everyone in their small town was talking about it. Her son, the decent boy she'd raised, was now being called a monster on national television. Marcus stopped leaving his apartment. He stopped answering his phone. His savings began to run out, because he had no income. 2 weeks passed. The news cycle moved on to new scandals, but Marcus remained in darkness. That's when his landlord, a man with a sympathetic face, slipped an eviction notice under his door. Exactly 3 weeks after the wedding, there was a knock on his door. It was a lawyer, a woman in an expensive suit, holding a thick envelope. Behind her stood 2 security guards. Marcus thought he was being arrested. Instead, she handed him the envelope and said simply, Mrs. Sarah would like to meet with you. She's authorized me to give you this information. Inside was a detailed statement from the hospital's chief cardiologist. It described how Sarah had experienced acute cardiac arrhythmia on her wedding day. It stated clearly that without immediate rescue breathing, without CPR, she would have died on the altar. It detailed how the groom was present but froze from shock. It explained that only one person moved with any medical knowledge or instinct. Her driver. The statement concluded that Marcus had saved her life. The lawyer also handed him a photo. Sarah in a hospital bed, tears running down her face, one hand pressed against her heart. The note written in her shaking handwriting simply said, "Thank you for my life." That same evening, Sarah appeared on a live television interview. She was still weak, still recovering, but her voice was strong and clear. She told the truth. She explained her condition. She explained that Marcus had saved her life because he was the only one paying attention, the only one who cared enough to notice she was struggling before anyone else did. She revealed that Michael had tried to convince her not to go public, that his lawyers had advised her to stay silent to protect the family's reputation. But she couldn't. She wouldn't let an innocent man be destroyed for having a good heart. She described Marcus as the most courageous person she'd ever known. The public reaction flipped instantly. The internet loves a redemption story, loves a chance to feel they were wrong. Media outlets that had condemned him now celebrated him as a hero. His story went viral again, but this time for the right reasons. People raised money for him online. Job offers poured in. But Sarah understood that none of those things mattered as much as clearing his name and proving to the world that he was innocent of any wrongdoing. 3 months later, Sarah hired Marcus as her personal assistant. Not out of pity, but because she respected him. She trusted him. And Marcus, for the first time since that wedding day, could breathe again. But the real turning point came when Michael, Sarah's husband, made a shocking announcement. He filed for divorce. Not because of Marcus, but because he realized something terrifying in those 3 weeks of silence. He didn't actually know his wife. He'd never paid attention to her the way this stranger, a mere driver, had. He felt threatened by the connection between them, disgusted by his own failure to notice she was suffering. The marriage was built on lies and convenience, not love. So he walked away. Sarah chose to leave her life of luxury for something more authentic. She left the towers and the charity galas and the fake smiles. She opened a small community health clinic in her neighborhood, and she hired Marcus to run the logistics and operations. She paid him well and treated him like an equal, a partner in something that mattered. They worked together for years, and somewhere along the way, respect turned into something deeper. They fell in love, not the passionate love of romance novels, but the quiet, steady love that comes from truly knowing another person. When they finally got married, it was a small ceremony with just close friends and family. No cameras. No headlines. Just 2 people who understood each other completely. And standing in the front row was Marcus's mother, healthy and smiling, tears of pride in her eyes. Her son had been called a monster by the world, and he'd chosen not to become bitter. He'd chosen to keep his heart open. And that choice had saved both his life and the life of the woman he loved. So let me ask you this. If you were in Marcus's position, surrounded by security trying to push you away, knowing that one action could destroy your life, would you have made the same choice? Would you have risked everything to save a stranger? Or would you have stayed silent and protected yourself? Think about it. Think about the people in your life who might be struggling right in front of you, and you simply haven't noticed. Think about how often we judge before we understand. Think about what it means to have true courage. If this story has touched your heart, I want to hear from you. Comment below and tell me, what would you have done? How do you think you would react if something like this happened to you? And more importantly, how many people around you right now might need someone to simply pay attention? Subscribe for more stories that will challenge the way you see the world. Stories that remind us that the poor sometimes teach the rich the most valuable lessons about what it truly means to be human.